Hello. How far have you gotten with your base makeup? I haven't put on anything. You haven't put on anything at all? Just toner and lotion. Toner and lotion, you need to smooth out your skin texture first. Some people have dead skin cells. And often there's dust on the skin too. So it's good to wipe your face with toner all over just to clean everything up. And when you use toner, if your skin isn't dry, it doesn't absorb the toner well. But if your skin is dry, it absorbs the toner easily. So you can tell, my skin is dry this time. This is Dr. Lotion. So don't apply too much lotion at first. Just take your time and apply it while considering your skin texture and temperature. But skincare basics are really important. If you apply your skincare well, your base makeup will look prettier, and even as time passes, your makeup will look better because of your skin texture. Don't try to apply too much from the start, but if you apply too little, some clients might feel unsure if anything was applied and get a bit frustrated. If you apply it with just a little bit of pressure, it adheres better and goes on more smoothly. Is there a particular reason you're using this product right now? I use this a lot because it's very gentle. Since some of the clients who come to the shop have sensitive skin, we try out different products, and if the staff agree that something works well, we end up sticking with that product. As for lotion, you absolutely have to apply it all the way down to your jawline. That way, when you do shading or your base makeup, it won't get cakey or patchy. If there's too much water in the latex sponge, it really won't adhere well. It should feel just slightly damp when you press it with a tissue. It's best to use it when you feel like almost all the water has been squeezed out. Use the latex sponge to wipe off any lotion that hasn't been absorbed yet. These are products from Wake, Make and Claro. I'll mix the two together and use them for you. Your skin should be a bit brighter so that when you apply color makeup later, the shades will show up more beautifully and match your complexion. If you tap too hard, it can hurt, and if you tap too softly, it won't adhere well. So it's best to do it with the same gentle touch as when you pat a baby's bottom. But our goal is to make sure this makeup lasts as long as possible for our clients, right? So I explained this while I'm spraying the fixer. I also ask if there's anything they'd like to touch up. Since I've already sprayed the fixer, when touching up later, it's best to just use a tissue to blot any excess oil, something like that. If you use too much shading on the nose, it can actually make the pores stand out or cause the makeup on the nose to break up faster. So instead of adding more product, I'll use just the leftover amount to do the base. This area between the eyebrows is really important. There are some people who don't like to brighten the area between their eyebrows too much. You might think, I'm going to contour here anyway, but this area needs to be cleaned so that the contouring looks neat too. So you really need to pay attention to the base here. Anyway, I'll be doing the base one more time later on. When you do eye makeup, powder might fall onto your face, or sometimes you need to add a bit more color after finishing the eye makeup. So in those cases, I'll brighten up the inner area a bit more for you. This model doesn't have eyebrows at the ends, as you can see. You need to apply a bit more powder towards the ends so that the eyebrow pencil doesn't clump when you draw the brows. But if you use too much, the powder and the eyebrow product might not adhere well, so you should do everything in moderation. When I draw eyebrows, if someone has thick brows, I use a soft, fluffy eyebrow brush. But if their brows are sparse, I use a slightly firmer brush. That way, the natural texture of the eyebrows comes out better. But at first, since I need to apply color evenly over the whole brow, I'll use a slightly softer, fluffier brush. And while it's fine to start drawing the eyebrows from the beginning, I personally start from the tail. That's because I feel like I need to see the overall color balance first. And if your eyebrow tattoo has turned reddish, there are some grayish eyeshadows you can use. It's actually better to mix those in when you're doing your brows. That's because you need to neutralize the redness a bit. Also, when drawing your eyebrows, if you avoid drawing a harsh line right above the hairs, you can achieve a more natural look. And after you've drawn your brows, if there are areas that need to be extended a bit, just use a very light touch to fill them in. Since I have an eyebrow tattoo right now, I'll try to match the color to my tattoo. and you start to get a sense of how far you should extend your eyeliner, right? By looking at the shape of the client's face, so just think I should extend it about this much and draw it out accordingly. And as you move toward the front, it's good to follow the natural direction of the brow hairs, slightly upwards. And when you're drawing your brows, you should never feel like there are any obvious empty spots. If your brows are a straight curve, you absolutely need to follow that curve and draw along the line to make your brows look more polished. Because even if you don't trim this area perfectly, as long as you draw this part well, the overall look of your brows can improve by about 50%. And when you look in the mirror, if you see that this area looks a bit sparse, then just fill in the sparse areas a bit more. And before applying eyeshadow, I'll use an eye primer to enhance the color payoff and adhesion. But if you apply too much eye primer, it can end up creasing or make the eyeshadow look cakey later on. It's best to apply just a tiny amount, to the point where you wonder, did I even put any on? That's about how much you should use. And before applying eyeshadow, I'll use concealer one more time to make this base area look a bit cleaner. For those who have slightly darker eyelids, it's better to first apply a bit of an orange tone to darken the area, and then layer a lighter shade on top. That way, when you apply eyeshadow, it looks prettier. So when I apply it here, I don't just use a concealer shade that matches my skin tone, but I mix in a bit of salmon color. I think that helps neutralize the area, so I blend them together before applying. But if you put on too much concealer, it can end up looking too thick later, so you should only apply a moderate amount. Before applying eyeshadow, you need to set the area with powder, but if you use too much powder, the eyeshadow color won't adhere well. So just apply a little at a time, enough so that it feels just slightly tacky or not tacky at all. And for those whose skin here is quite dark, there are products like this available. If you use something with a slight white tone or a peachy tone and mix it in, it can help the base make the eyeshadow colors look more vivid and bright when you apply them. And I actually haven't done this area yet. That's because I'm going to draw eyeliner here and add some shading. So if you apply it all the way up, the color might not show up later, or it could look too thick. So when you open your eyes, just make sure only about this much is visible. It's best to apply the shadow just up to the area right below where your eyelid is sunken in. That's because after blending everything out, if you go too high, the shadow can end up looking too dry or cakey for some people. So as you go higher, use a lighter touch. It actually varies a lot depending on the broadcasting station. To use music shows as an analogy, if the anchor stage comes out looking vivid, we try to avoid vivid or red lips as much as possible. We use toned down mauve shades, or if the stage doesn't look too vivid, we might add something a bit brighter. But on broadcasts, if you use colors that are too vivid, the lighting can make the shades look a bit tacky. In those cases, if you keep layering mauve or toned down colors, it actually comes out looking really nice. And if you feel like the gradient didn't blend well, you know the white shadow we used earlier. You can use something like that to gently blend it upward. Also, when adding depth to the eyes, you have to make sure the shading doesn't go up too high. When you open your eyes, it should show just about this much, right? When you're adding depth, this area needs to be the inner part of the eye. So you need to start from here and blend upward. If you try to apply too much from the beginning, it can end up looking really heavy. So it's best to gradually build up the color layer by layer. I personally think it looks prettier if there's a bit more in the center, so I tend to add a little extra there. And even though I applied pink on top, why doesn't the pink show up? But you don't need to worry about that, because when you add shading, the shadow blends together and sometimes it just doesn't show up clearly. In that case, you can just add a bit more of a pink accent when you apply blush or highlight the under eye area. Also, a lot of people fill in their waterline with liquid liner, but I usually use a gel liner instead. That is, as long as your eyes don't smudge easily, because I feel like this gives a more natural look. With liquid liner, it often ends up looking a bit blotchy. So just fill in the gaps between your lashes. And when it comes to filling in the waterline, some people start from the outer corner while others start from the inner corner. But for me, if I start from the outer corner, it can be hard to control the amount. So sometimes I end up with liner where I didn't intend to draw it and wonder, why did this part get filled in? That's why I start filling in from the center of my pupil. If you start here and move toward the end, it naturally creates a gradient effect. And if your eyeliner ends up looking too thick, instead of worrying excessively about it, you can simply use a concealer that isn't overly bright and perfectly matches your skin tone to gently erase and precisely shape the line as needed. If you draw the guideline for the line first, this area can look a bit empty. So I'll fill in this part a little. Think of it as coming down from the end, moving downward. That way you can extend the line without making it too thick. Some people have eyelashes that grow in 2 layers and some have 3 layers, right? So if you think of this as your eyelashes, just lightly tap as if you're poking between your lashes. And just because you have monoliths, you don't have to add a lot of shading and wonder, why is this area so filled in? You really don't need to overthink it. Since we can always make adjustments while doing makeup anyway, it's best not to feel too pressured. And for the eyeliner, when I opened my eyes and drew it, the upper part looked a bit blurred. When I closed my eyes, it looked about like this. So this is about how it turns out. And just like before, follow along the line and bring it down. Some people smudge after drawing the line, but I usually avoid doing that at the end of the line since it can make it look empty in some spots. So after drawing the line, I just touch up those areas that look sparse. When using the eyelash curler, lift your eyelid as much as possible like this, just like when you're filling in the waterline. That way, you can get right to the roots of your lashes and curl them well, and your lashes won't bend awkwardly in the middle. Some people with weaker lashes do end up with bent lashes, but you don't have to worry too much about that. And then just follow the shape of your lashes as they are. And when you're applying the false lashes, if you look at the model's eyes, the front part curls inward. In that case, just lift it slightly, apply some glue to the front, and then attach it like this. Keep adjusting the angle to match the shape of the eye, attaching one lash at a time, checking as you go this way, you can apply the lashes more safely. But when you attach the first one, the lash doesn't have much support yet, so it might sink in a little. After you attach 2 or 3, you'll get a feel for it and know how much to apply. And if you use too much lash glue, it can end up looking clumpy later. So as you move toward the end, it'll be easier to match the shape of your eye if you angle your body this way while attaching them. That way, your lashes won't stick out awkwardly, but will follow the natural curve. When it comes to lashes, some people hold each lash like this, while others hold them like this. But you should just do whatever feels comfortable for you, and the angle as well, choose whatever is easiest for you. When I apply them, I insert them like this. I wedge them in between each of my natural lashes like this. And at Olive Young, they have Filimili. That one's really good, was it number one? That's the most natural. You can use that to apply lashes and then put on mascara. So these days when I do idol makeup, I often use the Filimili ones with a more defined look at the end. That way it makes your eyes look a bit longer, I guess, even without drawing a line. The outer corners of your eyes lift slightly and also look a bit longer to the side. You don't have to extend your eyeliner or lotusing, these can achieve the same effect. So some people apply false lashes even if their natural lashes are long. It really depends on the person. If your natural lashes are already beautiful, sometimes adding false lashes can actually take away from that charm. So in those cases, I explain it to the client and just use mascara instead of applying falsies. When applying false lashes, it's fine to use long ones from the start, but if you do that, your eyes end up looking like this, right from the beginning. So for this person, I did apply longer lashes from the inner corner, but usually it's better to make them look longer around the iris area. And when applying lashes at the outer corners, it's quite common for the natural lashes there to not grow in a very pretty way. In those cases, it's fastest to just push the middle part in from the outer edge, even if you have to wedge it between your natural lashes and it gets a bit messy. If you start from the inner corner, you might end up thinking, oh no, what should I do? So in situations like this, it's better to wedge it in from the outer end. Because there are gaps, and when applying false lashes, it's most natural to start attaching them from where your iris begins. If you start too close to the inner corner, your eyes can end up looking a bit stuffy. Now, I'll tidy up the lash lines. And if you've applied the lashes too high, you can just brush them downward with something like a clear mascara. Because they're heavy, they tend to droop a little. And if your lashes still aren't sticking even after using clear mascara, it's not really a problem because even if it has some adhesive power, it's mainly just to help shape the lashes. Clio's adhesive is actually quite strong, so using Clio is really the best option. When applying mascara to your lashes, it's really best to use a very light touch. Otherwise, all the shape and texture I've created could get ruined, or you might end up with too much product where you don't need it. So just barely brush over them. Think of it as just lightly grazing the lashes. When attaching false eyelashes, you know this part, the part at the roots. The lashes need to adhere well at this part so that when you open your eyes, they fan out widely because there's nothing blocking them. These days, even with a heated lash curler, you just need to lightly brush over the lashes. The texture looks beautiful. If you're wondering whether you really need a heated lash curler, you can just lightly pass over or even skip it. And with mascara, it looks best when there are no clumps at the tips. If the lashes didn't stick well, then you can use the heated curler to shape them a bit. Your hands have some warmth, you can gently lift them up like this as well. That way it acts as an adhesive and helps the lashes stay lifted nicely. Earlier, when I was doing the base, I barely applied anything under the eyes, right? Anyway, color will be added to this area later on. If you want to do it, using concealer to prep the base first makes the color go on the cleanest and smoothest. After that, I personally don't use powder under the eyes. That's because if you keep layering powder, sometimes the color doesn't show up well, so I skip powder at this stage. But if your eyes tend to smudge easily, then I apply an eye primer and do the concealer step. When it comes to female idols, it's pretty important to accentuate the aegiosal, the little fat under the eyes. Rather than using a white or overly shimmery color for the aegiosal from the start, it's better to first apply a shade with a bit of color and then just add a highlighter like Ofra or Clio only to the areas that need to be highlighted. Of course, you can apply it from the beginning if you want, but for most clients, starting with that can feel a bit overwhelming. Your eyes have a slightly upward shape here, right? So it's better to extend the aegiosal a bit lower to make it look straighter. And after you apply the aegiosal and attach the false lashes, you'll often notice that you need to add a bit more shading. If you add a bit more shading in areas like this, it gives your eyes more depth and dimension. But when you start adding that shading, don't begin too close to the inner corner, just lightly sweep it on like this. It's better if this area is a bit more defined, and when you're working on the triangle zone, it's okay to bring it down a little lower. That's because I think the eyes look prettier when they extend this way. And you see this shading color here. Apply a bit of shading on the upper part as well, just enough so it overlaps slightly with that line. That way, even without extending the line too much, the shading makes your eyes look bigger overall. For the inner corner, you should bring it down slightly to give your eyes a softer kind of look. So it's actually better to fill in this area a bit more. And then just bring it down a little to create a sense of connection. And since this part here should be the darkest on the base you've laid down, focus a bit more on this area. If you find it a bit difficult to do the under eye line properly, just follow the direction of your lower lashes. You can also blend it out like this, There's no single right answer in makeup, so it's best to do whatever feels most comfortable for you. At Olive Young, there are a lot of liquid products, right? Take some out and mix them together. Since your ring finger has the lightest touch, if you use it like this, the shimmer will pick up nicely. Gently dab it on, little by little. But if you apply too much, since this is a liquid formula, it can actually remove the eyeshadow you've already put on. So just apply it so lightly that you can barely tell it's there. When adding shimmer, a slightly transparent look actually appears prettier on the eyes. Some people just dab it on in big dots like this, but if regular people do it that way, it might look a bit too much. So just lightly tap, tap, tap as if you're barely passing over it. That way, since it's a liquid, it won't crease as much even after some time has passed. I'll use some of the loose powder that's fallen off to brighten just the inner part of the base a bit more. But if you apply too much, your skin can end up looking thick. And here I've already laid down the base everywhere. So for this area, you really just want to use whatever product is left over, thinking, I'll just cover up to the aegyosal here and do the concealer work accordingly. There are some people who can't get good coverage here. You need to cover this area as well as possible so that your skin looks clean overall. You really have to cover up this redness well. And when I look at my dark circles, this part looks the darkest on screen right now. So gently blend it out, focusing on this area. And the concealer we used earlier is all on here. Use this to blend it out. That way your skin tone will match perfectly. The pores and blackheads on the sides of your nose can be visible, so it's best to gently brush over this area with a brush. You must press down the outer areas with powder. That way your face won't look oily all the way to the edges, and it will also make your face look smaller. Plus, your hair won't stick to your face. And when applying powder to the outer areas, there's always a shade that looks like this kind of powder color. You can find it at Olive Young. It's best to mix these kinds of shades and use them first to set the base. I'll prep the areas where the blush will go a little bit. That way, the blush won't look patchy. You need to set under the nose here and between the brows well, so that only the areas that really need a glow will shine even from a distance. That way the overall balance looks right. As for contouring, I start from here. Start right under the jaw, between the jaw and the neck, and then blend it upward. And if you apply too much contour as time passes and your makeup breaks down, only this area can end up looking dark. So it's better to tap it on lightly and check as you go. Also, I usually don't contour this area. That's because most East Asians have a bit of fullness here. This area is more hollow, so focus on contouring here and just lightly go around the outer edges here. That way your contour will look more natural. If you apply the contour color directly, sometimes it can leave a blotchy mark. So I usually set the area first with a powder that's similar to the contour color, and I don't contour my whole face. Even if you just define this line, your nostrils can look contoured, so I first define this line, then lightly sweep over the tip of my nose. When I look in the mirror and think, oh, this part looks a bit wider, I start from there and gently blend it out. And if your nose looks too long, then you can use whatever's left on the brush to gently break up the line like this. Because you're going to add highlighter anyway, at first you might think, what is this? But once you apply the highlighter, it doesn't stand out that much. Thinking about my face shape, I'll apply it a bit higher up. When applying this highlighter, instead of sweeping it on too much, it's better to apply it with a bit of tension like this. The color shows up much better that way. If you look at your aegyosal and it still doesn't show when you look straight ahead, then there will be a part that looks like it's sticking out a little. If you apply it from the center outward, you'll get that effect. And for aegyosal, instead of going too far upward, if you extend it slightly to the side, it can make your eyes look longer. And if your aegyosal ends up looking too intense or the area gets too wide, then, you know, the concealer brush you used earlier, just gently sweep over it with that. You used a skin tone apricot or pink shade to draw the aegyosal up to here, right? Then think of all of this as part of your eye and extend it once more down here. The length of the aegyosal should be about this much. Just extend it as if there's another pupil here in your eye. That should be enough. And if you do this, but the triangular zone of your eye still looks like it needs more shading, Then, like we did earlier, just sweep it down underneath here. Some people like to use blushes that have a white pink tone, but if you do that, it can make just this area look too pale. So it's better to mix in a slightly warm color as well. As for the blush, I personally think it's best to apply it within about this range. If you only apply blush in one spot, your face won't look balanced. It might look like it's going in this direction instead of that. So after sweeping a bit under the eyes, I'll add some color overall. If the client really likes pink tones, they'll definitely have a pink shade like this. If you mix in something like this and add a bit of glow, it looks even prettier. You can use something like this, or even use a product like this from Clio. If you have a lot of redness in your cheeks, you know these kinds of purple shades, you can first tone it down with something like Ballerina Pop, and since there's a lot of redness, you can actually use that redness as an advantage. Then just lightly mix in shades like these and apply them like this. But don't apply too much. You have to keep in mind that the redness will show up anyway. And for blushes with shimmer, instead of just tapping it on like this, you need to apply it with a bit of tension for it to really shine. Ochre cloud can look a bit too white, so if you're going to use it, only apply it to the very center or just to the areas where you want more volume, and then go over those spots with a highlighter. You don't necessarily need a cream blush. Products like this can bring out the glow just where you need it. I'll apply mascara to the lower lashes now. Sometimes I actually do this step after finishing everything else. If you want your eyes to look rounder when applying lower mascara, focus on the center. If you want your eyes to look wider, apply it to the outer corners as well. But if you feel like your under eye area looks too puffy when using the brush alone, you can use tweezers to go back and forth as well. Since I already have lip balm on, it can make the dead skin on my lips swell up. You can just press with a tissue and that's fine, but sometimes it can get sticky as time passes. So I think wiping with a wet tissue is the best way to remove the dead skin along with it. Later, when you're working with clients, it's best to just use the most moisturizing lip balm you have. But sometimes clients say their lips have no color at all. But if you feel like you need to add some color while doing makeup, you can use a tinted lip balm. And if the lips look really purple or dark, it's good to mix in a bit of orange to neutralize the color. At our shop, we use peach beige the most. If the pink is too pale, it can look out of place, so it's best to overline the lips with a color that's closest to your skin tone. You need to relax your hand, hold it at a slight angle, and if you need a defined line, you can fill it in a little. For people with longer filtrum, I also apply some color here. And if your lips spread out to the sides, the average lip shape looks like this. Since that's the prettiest, it's best to minimize the sides as much as possible and emphasize the top and bottom. I think the overall mood of the makeup is the most important thing. If the lips are really bold or intense, that could be a matter of personal preference, but I personally like a fresh, lively look when applied overall, so I'll use Bear Grape. Bear Grape is easy to use for the general public and is also convenient for those who prefer lip colors without much pigment. If the lip line is too defined, it can look strange, so I use a bullet brush to gently blend it out. And it seems like the color of Bear Grape isn't showing up very well. In that case, use something with just a bit more color than Bear Grape. Apply it mainly to the inner part of the lips. If you apply it all over, your lips might look like Atashinchi is a cartoon character. I'll use the bullet brush to blend here as well. So when I need to do my makeup quickly, I only use this brush. Because it's plump and white on the side, I can apply it really fast like this, but you have to use a light touch, otherwise you'll leave streaks. Colored lip balms tend to be sticky. So it's best to apply it first and then gently tap, tap, tap it in. If your lips look too glossy overall, they can end up looking messy or like you've just eaten something greasy. So use a shade that's similar to your skin tone or your lip color, or mix in some powder and just define the outer edges a bit. Finally, when you look at the whole face, you might notice, oh, I need some coverage here. In that case, go ahead and cover it, but sometimes people apply color directly when covering up. If you have areas where the skin is peeling, for example, in those cases, you absolutely have to just layer it on. Use a color that's similar and gently apply it only to the surface. That's it for the makeup.